Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So I'm the CEO of Corent Technology. I didn't start it, but I joined them in early 2000s. And the idea of Corent was to build the software equivalent of what Intel built for hardware. Before Intel, every computer company used to design their own chipset, hardware, operating system, application, software, and everything called vertical integration. And Intel came and said, look, let us build the processor, the CPU, the chip, and you guys build the rest. So from vertical integration, we went to horizontal integration, value chain. Different people provided different chains of value. So with Corent, we said, can we build the core of the modern software enterprise? And that's what Corent stands for, core enterprise, the core of a modern software built based on the Intel Inside business model.
And what influenced you to choose your career path?
So you mean leaving the corporate world and become a startup guy?
Right.
All right. So from the beginning, I had some inclination for entrepreneurship, for leadership. Even when I was at HP, when I left after 14 years and for the first time had to build a resume, I figured out that every 2 years I had changed jobs. And most of it was by choice. And I figured out when I felt comfortable in a position, I was practically kicking myself out to something else that allowed me to stretch, to learn, and to extend myself. So when it comes after 14 years, and I felt pretty comfortable doing different things, and I said, okay, it's time to graduate. So I declared myself a graduate of the big corporate world and took a 50% cut in pay and voluntarily left HP and joined a few people that they were building a startup in Silicon Valley. When Steve Jobs passed away, a week later, I had the privilege of giving a talk at the IBM Innovation Center in Silicon Valley. And that night I was debating with my talk, and I later on figured out that I got to say something about Steve Jobs and the impact he made for the entire industry before I speak. So around midnight, I turned on the lights, got my computer up, and I added a slide about Steve. And as I was thinking about it, I remembered that 20-some years ago at Stanford, we had a conversation, personal conversation like this. And that was the time that he was fired from his own company, and he was trying to figure out the next move and build the next company. And he made a big impact. And he said, don't do anything you don't have a fire in the belly for, and repeated it 6-7 times. And also said some good things about, don't forget about your family and personal life. That is inappropriate to share publicly, but very impactful comments about the meaning of your life, and also be passionate about what you do. So during my career, when I left HP, that was a tough decision to leave HP at the position that I was. Later on, I figured out that that conversation had planted the seed and made a big impact. So I started my talk at IBM without getting permission, and we had a slide about Steve, and I had just discovered this audio commercial that Steve had done for Apple that was never aired. Somebody didn't permit him to air it, and it's called The Crazy Ones. And if you haven't seen it, nowadays it's all over the web. At that point, it was not discovered yet as much. So we played the video of The Crazy Ones at the beginning of the talk. And then I delivered the talk that I was supposed to give, the official talk. And later, a couple of IBM vice presidents who were sitting there came and privately said, thank you for doing that. That was very unauthorized, but very appropriate to do so. It's like taking liberties when you have some allowance. So that's as far as shifting from big corporations to building, not that there's anything wrong with big corporations, but when that shift took place, I realized there have been multiple influences in my life, and for one, I was very grateful to have that privilege and opportunity to come across Steve in early 90s and have that conversation.
what is like your life philosophy? What do you live by? What is something that drives you in your day-to-day?
That's a loaded, powerful question. But let's talk about it, yeah. So through the years, I've learned that the rhetoric that follow what you love and the money would follow is so true, because at the beginning you think it's a cliche and what they're talking about. So basically the basic philosophy is meaning before money. Or get a little money in order to go find meaning and then make more money, but put meaning before money. And that could be a simple philosophy, but again, talking about Steve that said, have fire in the belly for what you do. Don't do things you don't have passion for. It comes to finding what you're passionate about, what your calling is, and what do you like to do that is in line with your personality, with your aptitude, and follow that. That is one simple answer to a very powerful question.
I'll accept it. During your experiences at HP, you were all around the world, all over the globe. One of the things that you shared with me is how you build your alliances and your relationships, and I really think that it would be important to share that with everyone, because I was really fascinated by listening to you talk about how you do that, or how you did that.
So I had the privilege of, I call myself the industrial ambassador to the world, and going and building relationship between different industrial complexes and multi-billion-dollar corporation. I regarded it as a phenomenal opportunity, and also it was in line with my personality, because not only I was a technologist, but I loved people and building relationship with people. So it was a very much aligned work with my personality. That's why I felt I was good at it. And Harvard Business Review sent someone to interview me. I mean, how do you do these multi-billion-dollar alliances? Is there any secret there? And it was tough to answer it. When I was thinking about it, I realized the philosophy is very, very simple. And it's about the corporations are not for real. They're buildings, they're logos, and what makes the corporation real are the people within those corporations. So when you're building an alliance between two corporations, it's really an alliance between two people or two groups of people. So instead of focusing on a big logo and a big stock symbol, I focused on the individual on the other side. I said, well, you're an individual, you're a father, you're a son, you're a brother, you are an employee, you are a husband or wife or so on. How can I help you be successful? And if they were more in tune with that philosophy, they would, I would jokingly say, retaliate and say, Feyzi, how can we be helpful to you? And if our corporations have done their job right, the personal interest would be in line and aligned with the corporate interest. So by helping the individual, you're helping the corporation. By getting the person to feel comfortable and helping achieve their goals, that should be in line with the corporation. So the philosophy was simple: focus on the people, and the business and the corporate world would follow, versus focusing on some esoteric ideas that people don't subscribe to begin with. And that was what I shared with Harvard Business Review, and it was published, and I wasn't embarrassed about it, because it's not something business schools teach you, and it may come across as a very simple-minded strategy, but that was the truth.
It's good to be honest.
Yes.
What is your definition of an entrepreneur? We hear the word used so much nowadays. What is your definition? I love the way that you talk about what an entrepreneur is.
So first of all, there is no somebody's entrepreneur and somebody's not an entrepreneur. Everyone has different degrees of entrepreneurship in them. It's hard to find someone who's absolutely not an entrepreneur, despite the fact that once in a while you come across someone. So having said that, there are two common definitions of entrepreneur: someone who's responsible for commercialization and monetization of the business, as differentiated from the innovator or the inventor. Somebody could invent something, somebody could be an innovator of a process, but somebody else would take the ownership for commercialize and monetize, and that person is an entrepreneur and uses innovation as a tool for creating success and creating wealth. That is one definition of entrepreneur. A lot of innovators and inventors confuse themselves with being an entrepreneur. Steve Jobs was an entrepreneur. He didn't invent anything, but he created the company. The commercial success was his goal. He was making calls to get that first 250K that came in from Mike. The other definition of an entrepreneur is someone who is responsible for the business success, bringing the company together and bringing the resources together, and basically, in summary, taking risk. He's the chief risk officer. If something goes wrong, the entrepreneur should be the one. No pointing, no blaming. It's the entrepreneur who's responsible for the failure of the business. And the success, the good entrepreneur will share it with everyone. My favorite definition of an entrepreneur is the two above combined with someone who is driven, who is visionary, and most importantly, someone who is energetic to initiate something, to create something that didn't exist before. Like our friend who started the Startup Grind, 2010, got together with some people and started something to fill a gap, to fill a void. To me, that initiation, that positive energy that goes behind starting an endeavor, whether it's for-profit or non-profit, that is the entrepreneurial spirit. And the individual is an entrepreneur.
And you talk a lot about the importance of energy. Can you share a little bit more in depth about that? The energy through...
It's my favorite topic about energy. So years ago, I opened a fortune cookie, and it says that 3 pillars of capitalism are capital, energy, and ideas. And I loved it. I still have it somewhere on my desk. And the way I interpreted, and I mentioned it to a few people, and they said, yeah, we need oil, we need nuclear, we need all form of solar, my favorite kind of energy. But I interpreted it, the capitalism that we enjoy in the free world needs capital, needs ideas, but I interpret the energy as the human, positive, can-do energy. So from that perspective, the basis for building capitalism, the free economy, the entrepreneurial spirits, Steve Jobs' energy, it's that personal energy that doesn't take no for an answer, that drive through failure and make something that sometimes again and again and again fails, Thomas Edison, a success. And to me, that is the way I look at energy. And my friend and my esteemed friend and my executive coach, Marshall Goldsmith, is a bestseller author, and he did a lot of work with Peter Drucker. He co-authored a lot of books with him. He has a recent bestseller called Mojo. By the way, his previous bestseller, great book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Read that book. It's 20 things you should avoid doing as an executive. And I am so grateful for his teachings and coaching. But the book Mojo, it's about that personal positive energy that starts from within and it radiates to the outside from an individual. So that individual positive energy for me is the driving force behind a lot of great things that happen in our society and in our industry.
What is something that you think is a must-do item for an entrepreneur, a CEO, a leader? We talked a little bit about that.
So something I discovered later in my career that if I had discovered sooner, like many other things, I would have been more successful, was the fact that each entrepreneur, each CEO, or each leader needs a personal, trusted advisory board. People that would complement you, not tell you, good for you, you're great, you're fantastic, you're awesome and amazing. Somebody says, Naomi, let's come here, let me talk about something. Among our friends, we call it carefrontational. You confront with care because you care about the individual, and you've built the trust. It requires the tact, interpersonal skills, and trust, and communicate. So basically, the personal board of directors is key. Now, above and beyond the personal board of directors, what I discovered in year 2000, that we all need executive coaches. It's phenomenal to have an external brain that brings his or her experience to the table. Like I mentioned, Marshall Goldsmith's been an executive coach. And in 2004, it was formalized. So it's okay to be a coach. Why? Because the Harvard Business School published a paper that, hey, it's phenomenal to have an executive coach. So that was really officially blessed by HBR to have an executive coach. So that's another thing, coach and mentor on a formal paid way, someone that helps you get better, but keeps you accountable for improvements. And then there are multiple organizations, CEO, executive organizations in the world, Vistage being the biggest one. I've been a member for about 8 years, that you spend one whole day, closed door, confidential, with an executive coach, monitored and moderated sessions. So executives of very different persuasions, different industries, etc., get together and keep each other accountable and share their experiences. So those, the whole coaching and mentoring and being in that mind frequency of constantly learning and improving would be something that I absolutely strongly recommend to CEOs, especially to entrepreneurial CEOs.
Because you're continually learning. You still have a mentor too, correct? Yes. Or several mentors?
Yes, multiple. I'm a member of 3 CEO groups, by the way. And on a monthly basis, we have meetings, one of them full day, one of them, half day. And I know people who spend more time in their CEO groups, which for very busy people who are running 7, 8 companies, etc., you say, where do you get the time to do it? And the answer is you cannot afford not to do it. So that's basically the part of having a philosophy of constantly learning, constantly growing, and constantly getting better at what you do, mastering the art of what you do as a commitment to your profession, to your job.
Can you share something that's worked really well for you that you think that entrepreneurs could learn from?
Yes. Another thing besides having coaches and mentors and being members of executive membership teams was when I was at HP, a friend of mine, she was telling me, Feyzi, you got to join Toastmasters, you got to join Toastmasters. And I wasn't sure what it is, and always you procrastinate and put someone aside. Years later, mid-90s, I joined the Toastmaster, and that was really a phenomenal organization. I contribute a lot of my successes as an entrepreneur to my MBA that I did in a part-time basis to learn and absorb and integrate the learnings into my work and to my Toastmaster career, and not necessarily in that order. And Toastmasters, for those of you who don't know, is a global membership organization around the world. It has membership in 122 countries. I didn't know there are so many countries in the world. Maybe after the Soviet Union fell apart, there are now, so many countries, but over 300,000 members. And this organization is a communications and leadership organization. And the thing that you may not know, how many of you know where it started, where Toastmasters started? Okay, where? Right here. Right here. Toastmasters started at the YMCA in Santa Ana exactly 90 years ago. And now it's an organization that is in 122 countries, 300,000 members, and that is the most, probably there are about 50 chapters within Jogging Distance here, and a lot of leaders get trained in Toastmasters. So something that I wish I knew before I did, but I'm grateful that because of my friend's persistence, I finally got into it. I even served as the president of a Toastmasters chapter in Silicon Valley for a year. It's a must do, it's not optional. So here's the prescription.
Can you share a favorite quote of yours?
Favorite quote, okay. One thing that I love is about the fact that people have different aptitudes, people have different strengths. Peter Drucker said the essence of management is discovering people's strength and making their weakness irrelevant as the essence of management. So my favorite quote is, it's not how smart you are, it is how you're smart. I have a second quote. Am I allowed to share that?
Okay.
All right. And that one is more in line with entrepreneurship. And I heard it from this phenomenal speaker and author, Keith Harrell, who was laid off from IBM, but before he knew he was being laid off, the general manager said, look, 1/3 of you will be laid off next week. And he said, hey, can I have a question? I said, yeah. He said, now that we're laying off 1/3 of people, can I finally get that corner office? That was a very a positive attitude. And but he was laid off. And he became a motivational speaker, and his book is Attitude is Everything. So he built a career on his strength, that maybe he shouldn't be in that office and cubicle, he should have been a motivational speaker to begin with. But the quotation is from Keith that I asked him. I had the privilege of him being a keynote speaker at one of the HP events, and gave his book Attitude is Everything to all the 300 attendees. And the quote from him is, there is no traffic jam on the extra mile. Going that extra mile is the key that differentiates you and becomes the key to success. You get out of that crowded highway and zoom forward. So that's another favorite quote.
Well, thanks for sharing. One of the many things that I enjoyed in our time last week together was your thoughts on the importance of the soft skills and the hard skills. So I wanted you to kind of share that with everyone, because I was just like, wow, this is really interesting. I think we just could have went on and talked, but can you share a little bit about that with everyone?
Would be happy to. So a lot of people focus on hard skills, specific knowledge that you can pass a certification test and you pass and get your degree and put it on the wall and so on, which are all good, by the way. They're excellent. As it comes to entrepreneurial success, as it comes to leadership, I've figured out that the soft skills are the hard skills. You can't go to school for it and get a certificate. You got to develop that communication skills. You got to develop that interpersonal skills. You got to develop that soft negotiation skills as opposed to bargaining. You got to develop the conflict resolution skills. A lot of skills, public speaking skills, a lot of skills that you don't get a certificate for, but those are the delta. Those are the difference between an ineffective leader and an effective leader. So in my mind, the schools, the educational schools, not only responsible to teach the hard skills, but also there should be an incubation for people to develop the soft skills. When there's a project, when there's teamwork, when you gotta go to your professor and ask for an extension, these are all going to school to develop those soft skills. And unfortunately, no one tests that, measure it, and give people a grade on their soft skills. The results are clear in life, that once somebody hits a ceiling and somebody else keeps going up. And that's why they call Marshall Goldsmith to come and coach, and the 20 things you're not supposed to do, which are all soft skills, and so on. So in my mind, learning the soft skills, beyond learning the hard skills, is the key to greater success. Instead of having a good life, having a great life.
And our last question for tonight is, how do you define success? What is your definition?
Through the years, I've developed a simple definition for success. A lot of people talk about success and have different criteria, usually how much money you have in your bank account. Once I had an undesirable grade, not to be mentioned what it was, in college, and I went to my professor. I said, look, this grade is unacceptable and I want to take the test again, and I fell asleep at the final. And he kept looking, and I did, by the way. I studied so hard that I fell asleep. So he looked at me and until I finished my lecture and pitch, and he said, Feyzi, I got an F in life. Divorced 2 times, my daughter doesn't talk to me, etc., etc., etc. He went through the whole thing. And you're here complaining about a bad grade? And I was so energized, I was so happy. So I went on campus walking, and a friend of mine saw me. He said, why are you so happy? I said, hey, I tell you the grade, I have an F. And he said, why are you so happy? And I said, because I didn't get an F in life, and I can go and take the place. So that's how you can get an F and be so happy. So I've developed a simple philosophy for success. And that is, you're successful if you like who you are, if you like what you do, and if you like how you do it. How's that for a definition of success?
That just makes the whole interview worth listening to.
Thank you.
You're amazing. So what did you guys think about Feyzi, right?